abilities in this modern age, and I hope this bill will be a step further. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr. Chairman, I want to thank members opposite and the members of the Green Party who were involved in the bill, and to compliment the Honourable Ruth Dyson on her chairing of this committee. I think this bill and a measure which is going to follow bills where there was a considerable amount of agreement amongst members as to the direction, and where there were changes that we wanted to make to the legislation, then there was, I think, good consideration taken of the suggestions, and the committee ended up with the sort of unanimity that can be had if people listen to evidence, consider submissions, make some changes, and act in a way that is designed to get sustainable legislation rather than things which are highly politicised and likely to change. The iGovernment Identity Verification Service has been in place for a couple of years now for people wanting to authenticate their identities in their interactions with the Department of Internal Affairs, the births, deaths, the marriages registry. But it has been something which has been very limited. What this bill does is allow the service to expand in its availability to all members of the public and allow more agencies to use the service to identify the clients. What it does effectively is reduce the hassle of people having to submit documents over and over again. And I might say, having recently dealt with the Department of Internal Affairs on the question of a passport renewal. The change that has occurred in recent years around the simplification and not having to provide the same documentation and again on renewal is something which I think is real progress. And if that can be continued, and we go back to what is effectively an old-fashioned notion, Mr. Chairman, about the indivisibility of government. And the Crown is not meant to be divisible. You deal with the Crown. I think the way that we have developed over the last 20, 30, 50 years has been that we've been dealing with ministries and departments in their own separate silos and in quite different ways and with different standards, rather than dealing with the Crown as a whole. And my view is that what this bill does is allow for individuals to deal with the Crown as a whole, and I think that is something which is very useful. I think it's fair to say that since this bill was introduced, there have been some questions around the security of information held by the Crown. I think that I'm not absolutely certain that this bill would have had the clean run through the select committee process if it had been introduced 3 months or 6 months later than it was. I think at that stage there might have been quite a lot more debate around it. But my view is that the principles that are involved in it and the legislation itself are okay, but I think what has happened since, and I'm sure there'll be further discussion as we go through the committee stages, there'll be more focus on security and proper arrangements around the legislation rather than it being and the examples. The examples of the ACC, the multiple ACC leaks. Now, both the ones which are, one hopefully my view would be they'd be careless out of the ACC, and those which appear to have been deliberate, which have come from sources yet to be finally established. But I think what we are focusing on at the moment is a Crown with a series of both departments and other Crown entities where there are some real questions around the security of personal information. And as we head into, Mr Chairman, as we head into an electronic identity verification service, people will want to know that their information is not going to be accidentally disclosed through this sort of system. And it's not as if ACC has been the only case, and it's not as if Judith Collins has been the only minister in charge of the sort of breaches that have occurred. There have been some in IRD, which I regard very seriously. I think that the idea that one's information is held by the IRD and that is sacrosanct is something which is very important, as it is, frankly, with WINS. The fact that there have been through the various portals, the availability and the fact of massive breaches is something that we will have to consider as we work our way through the legislation. And then, of course, more recently, the Nova Pay breach that became apparent over the last 4 or 5 days, the fact that a lot of information, personal information to individuals, has been made available. I think all of those things slowly reduce people's trust in the Crown as a whole to hold information securely. And a system like this, which is a voluntary system, is going to depend on people trusting the Crown to hold the information. Now, I think my colleagues know that some of my views on this information are somewhat different, and I don't necessarily have the strongest views or strong views as others do in this area, and that I think there'd be a lot of things which would be simpler. I think a small microchip in an earring could be something which would be quite useful for people carrying their information around and sharing it with government departments. It would mean that you could have a consistent approach, and the information could be updated, and through that. Through that, Mr Chair, I'm sure, I think as a rural member you would be aware of the advantages of ear tagging and the electronic systems which are available. And I might say in my electorate, the Time 7 group have some very good systems whereby they're somewhat questionable as to their privacy, but they use it for conference systems, which shows where at a particular conference individuals are. People wear a tag, either a badge or something on a lanyard around their neck, and as they go through particular doors, it shows that they're at this particular seminar or that seminar on this branch. Now, I think unfortunately it's shown on a number of. Well, no, it's not quite the same as the badges that we carry, because one does not have to swipe these ones, just pass through a door, and one's identity is recorded. But unfortunately for some recent people at a real estate conference in Auckland, it recorded not only the fact that they went in, but the fact that they went out. And on occasions, people's long absences were noted, and sometimes grouped. And that, I think, led to some questions of privacy and lack thereof. Now, I'm sure that we're not heading towards that sort of system with this. But what I hope, Mr Chairman, and it might take 5 or 10 years, and a development of trust in the government and its ability to hold information securely and to respect people's privacies. But I hope that we do get to a change of government. Obviously, there's got to be a change of government before that happens, and a building of trust. But I hope that eventually this sort of system becomes more or less universal. That we do have standard systems which people are all prepared to be part of, and that way we have a simpler system. We don't end up with multiple systems of some people bringing their paper into the office.
I call Dennis O'Rourke.
Mr. Chair, I